This video is going to fully cover the strategy known as Mapless Buried Treasure, or Mapless, in which we use the pie chart to find a buried treasure chest. This chest contains a lot of great stuff for speedruns, including important materials, good food, and even weapons, or TNT. Buried treasure is by far the most consistent source of all materials in the overworld, so top speedrunners primarily reset to find these chests. Similar to other strategies in the game, we use the pie chart to find the buried treasure, or more specifically, the chunk that the treasure chest is in. The information we get from the pie chart is that there's some sort of block entity in one of the chunks we can currently see on our screen. Block entities include chests, spawners, beds, and more, but during the mapless split, we're looking for the chest spike. Similar to all spikes, the spike we get from the chest can vary a bit depending on a few factors, but the first thing we need to do is identify which chunk is giving us a spike. When you're in the correct chunk, we always know where the buried treasure is, since it always spawns underground at chunk coords 9-9. Chunk borders are one of the best ways to determine where the buried treasure is. We can turn these on using F3 and G, and it displays lines where multiple chunks intersect. If you suspect there's buried treasure near you, you should immediately turn on chunk borders to start finding the chunk. Since we're loading a ton of chunks at any given time, it can be hard to tell which specific chunk is giving us a spike. A great way to help with this is to reduce how many chunks we have on our screen. The first way we can do this is by lowering our render distance and our entity distance. Render distance makes spikes more apparent and consistent. Most renders use anywhere from 5 to 8 RD depending on personal preference. Entity distance isn't required, but it makes finding buried treasure extremely easy, as the spike is much easier to differentiate from other common spikes, like spawners. The next way is reducing our field of view. Previously, runners would lower their FOV down to 90, or even all the way down to 30 to find the buried treasure. However, runners like Priffin have popularized the use of a thin window to find buried treasure. There are a couple reasons this is good. First, less on your screen means it's easier to identify which chunk is giving you the spike. But the larger reason is how immediate the spike appears once you cross the chunk border. Compare this to a scan on Quake Pro or even 70 FOV, and you can see how easy it is to tell exactly what chunk gave you the spike. Combine these two reasons with the fact that you can change your resolution immediately without opening the menu, or even without a macro if you want, and it shows why the vast majority of top runners use thin to find buried treasure. Now that we have the tools to clearly see the spike, we just need to track down exactly what chunk we're looking for, the source of the spike. Once you get a spike, the information that you know is that the chunk is somewhere on your screen. We can use this to our advantage by scanning from both sides of the spike. This allows us to estimate just how far the buried treasure is, even if you aren't paying too close attention to the specific chunk borders. In this example, the BT is far, so I have to look very far in both directions to find the spike. In this example, the BT is close, so it's difficult to get the spike off of my screen. Once we think we're in the chunk, we can double check it's correct using a couple of methods. If you're using thin, my preferred method is to look sideways or backwards while inside the chunk and noticing if the spike disappears at any point. The other option is to change your perspective to look at yourself and see if the spike disappears. There is a slight disadvantage of using perspective though. If the BT chunk is actually in a lower subchunk, there's a chance the F5 view won't exactly pick up the chunk below, so I'd recommend using thin as I said before. Once we're in the chunk, all we need to do is find 9-9 in the chunk. Luckily, we have a line in the F3 menu with the exact chords of the chunk we're in. Once we're at 9-9, all we need to do is dig down and we find the buried treasure. There's a couple of ways we can find 9-9 quickly. My personal favorite is using the crosshair that appears while we have the F3 menu open. The red and blue line point positive in the X and Z direction respectively, meaning if both our chunk chords are below 9, we can instantly run in the direction these lines point in. The other good tip is to align yourself one axis at a time. If you're a professional, you may choose to move straight in the direction that you're furthest from 9-9 in, while strafing slowly in the direction that you're only a few blocks off. While it's good we can now find the treasure, we need to ensure that we know what we're looking for. Sometimes, dungeons with spawners and chests can be in the ground below us. As you can see here, the spike from a spawner is quite different. You can choose to memorize the values, but I choose to instead pay attention to the speed of the spike once it's loaded. This can make it very quick on your brain to tell if you have a chest loaded or a spawner. While we can easily tell when we're loading a spawner, some spikes are essentially the same, since they're also just chests. The most common spikes are shipwrecks, which are playable, or ruins, which generally mean it's time to stop looking for a treasure on your island. If you'd like though, the chests and ruins sometimes contain a map that can lead to a nearby buried treasure. Now you have everything you need to find a buried treasure and ignore the fake spikes. But where should we be looking? Buried treasure chests can only spawn in the beach and frozen beach biome, with the vast majority in speedruns found in regular beaches, since frozen beaches rarely have trees nearby and can take longer to get chests below ice. If you're thinking, all I need to do is make sure the check I'm in has a beach in it, you're almost correct. However, the game's a bit more specific than that. The best block to tell if a BT can be in the same chunk is the 10-10 chunk coords, right next to where BTs spawn. This means that you're if 9-9 and it's a forest, it may not matter if 10-10 is a beach. In general though, the center area of a chunk should be a beach biome and not anything else. If there's a tree right next to 9-9, it's probably the wrong chunk. If you've watched speedruns before, you may be aware that sometimes buried treasure chests are extremely obvious to see, due to the way they affect the terrain around them. The best way to see this is when a chest spawns underwater with gravel covering it. Since gravel in the beach biome is generally only 1 block thick before stone, the treasure replaces the gravel at 9-9, and it has to cover itself to hide. This can manifest in a few ways, including using stone blocks, but will often look like one of these patterns. Good runners can immediately identify the chest when they jump into the ocean and see one of these. Now that we know everything, I'd like to share what I look for when I'm doing Mapless. First, I reset on 8 render distance, 50% entity distance, hitboxes and chunk borders on, and I use Quake Pro so I can spin around quickly. When I notice a spike that I think is real, I immediately change to my thin resolution and rescan. I then usually scan from the other side to estimate distance. If it's close, I rescan until I know the exact chunk, check my work, and then find 9-9 and dig. If it's far, I generally focus on getting to the area I just estimated quickly. Since it's sometimes on the other side of the island, it's good to focus on traveling through the trees or around mountains, and to try and hit my head on the leaves above me when I can, to gain a bit of speed. Once I'm close, I'd find the chunk, check my work, then dig at 9-9. If you have any questions about this, you can always DM me on Discord at Meeby, and if you have any differing opinions or methods to find the BT, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. I've also linked some older videos on the topic if you're interested, as well as a tutorial on resizing your window for a thin resolution. Thank you.